Hey, we should do this whole review as a car chase. We just find the nearest cop. Allison, just flip him off. Dave, throw your Pepsi at him.
Well, we got arrested. This was nothing like Smokey and the Bandit. We couldn't find our CB radio. It just...
The semi-truck drivers were no help. There wasn't a sweet Jerry Reed score playing in the background. We just had to listen to the radio.
The main theme of it sounded a lot like Johnny Cash's One Piece at a Time, so I kept thinking of that.
Oh, yeah.
I can kind of see that.
Kinda.
There's been many times where some of us have been drunk at a bar and we put the soundtrack to this on the jukebox. Especially when my mom's there, too.
It makes everyone in the bar giggle.
It does. And every time it happens, everybody in the bar sings along, too.
Yeah, this was fun. This was my first time seeing it, so I had a lot of fun watching this movie.
So you really liked it?
Yeah.
This is a classic. I love this fucking movie, man. It's one that I grew up on. And you just saw it for the first time, and you didn't really grow up on it.
I didn't really, I was aware of the movie, but it wasn't something that was really, that I had really sat down and watched till I think I was probably in early high school.
Oh,
and
wow.
I don't have a soft spot for this movie like a lot of people do.
Uh-huh.
I
Well,
don't
I had fun,
think...
and I didn't have any ties to it.
Well,
so.
that's the thing. It's not a bad movie by any means, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It is deservedly a classic.
Oh, yeah.
I completely understand why the people that love it.
Mm-hmm.
But in my brain, just like the first time I saw it, probably when I was like 14, part of me goes, if we were reviewing this movie, if it were made like last week, we would be tearing it apart.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't be. I still laugh my ass off at this movie. I would. Like, I play the cinema snob. I'm not one in real life. Like, I wouldn't... I would still laugh my ass off at this movie. Like, and yeah, I grew up on it. But... look at when we reviewed Space Jam.
Oh,
like
no,
we were sitting there like, yeah, this movie was 20 years ago, but
No, this holds up much better.
yeah, exactly.
No, like,
People often compare Space Jam and Smokey and the Bandit. So.
Always, all the time.
Because if this movie has nothing else, it has the cast, which is fantastic.
The cast.
Everyone in this movie is gloriously fantastic.
It's the cast that makes this movie. It's the cast that sells these lines. It's, Burt Reynolds being Burt Reynolds and selling these puns that he's saying. It's Jackie Gleason stealing every goddamn scene in the movie. Like, it's a talented cast that's making gold out of these lines.
And Snowman does not get enough credit.
You're right. Jerry Reed is awesome.
Yeah. No, he does not get enough credit in this for this movie.
And Fred, too.
Well, Fred, yes.
Fred was amazing. Star of the movie.
I lean over to Laura and I'm just like me and Lloyd, when he always goes off to the pond, gets lost, and I have to go get him out.
He's kind of Lloyd-shaped.
He really kind of is,
round
honestly.
and round.
Just lug him around. Now you get in there, Lloyd.
I was glad to see the origin of a lot of these types of movies, because Smokey and the Bandit was the start of that kind of like bunch of good old boys. And they got and see the dumb sheriff and a bunch of rednecks out there trying to get them. And,
Yeah, Smokey and the Bandit and the Dukes of Hazzard TV show definitely
nice
started a lot
this.
of things.
It was nice to see it done well, because there's a lot of things that imitated it that didn't do it well. So it's nice to see the best version of it.
Yeah.
Including the movie's sequels.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
they're
seriously,
bad.
like you were mentioning earlier about, like, tearing this movie apart if it came out today. Like, no, that's what would happen if like, they re-released Smokey and the Bandit 2, or especially 3. And when you grow up with movies like this, like I did, because when this movie came out in 77, my parents, they went to go see this, like, 100 times at the theater, to the point to where they had this movie memorized. Like, and yeah, for as long as I can remember, I've seen this movie.
Yeah.
We would watch it several. We had it on tape, then we'd get it on VHS, and then, after that as well. And growing up, if you grow up with a movie like this, that means you also grew up with all the other movies that are in this genre too, especially the Burt Reynolds ones. Or the good old boy movies in general. And when you've seen all of them, you definitely recognize which ones are
good and which ones are terrible.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Which ones are Smokey and the Bandit, which is very, very funny and very entertaining. And then the ones that are like Stroker Ace or like the rip-offs of Smokey and the Bandit, like Smokey Bites the Dust and shit like that.
Oh, yeah.
Smokey Bites the Dust.
Really low budget. There was a lot there was a lot of low budget knockoffs of this back in the late 70s.
Drive-in movies.
Yeah, total drive-in movies, and like even mainstream ones like would capitalize on this. Whether it was, and some of them would be pretty good, like the one with like Burt and Jan Michael Vincent, Hooper. Like some would still be Cannonball Run is a blast.
Cannonball Run's a good movie.
Yeah, Cannonball Run's a fucking blast. But Burt Reynolds is one of those guys, or at least for me anyway, that I can still watch a bad Burt Reynolds movie, because good or bad, it's still Burt being Burt, and to me, that's awesome.
Well, I haven't seen a large extent of Burt Reynolds' filmography. I've seen some stuff, but I haven't really seen peak Burt Reynolds until today. And there's such charm to him.
Yeah.
And he's walking around in like those tight bell-bottom pants. Saying like awful things, but it's charming anyway. Like you're like, that's terrible.
Because it's all about the glint in his eye.
Yeah. Like his laugh's so charming.
And that's the thing, like about Burt Reynolds is, quite honestly, a lot of his movies really aren't good. But Burt Reynolds is always great in them because he's always Burt Reynolds.
Yeah.
And like the really good Burt Reynolds movies you could probably count on one hand.
You can cut some. There are great Burt Reynolds movies. There are Burt Reynolds movies like that he's been Oscar nominated for, like that he's delivered like award-worthy performances.
No, but those fantastic ones.
Yeah,
those ones that like Deliverance and Boogie Nights.
Hustle and Sharky's Machine and movies like that.
Yeah, but those are it.
Yeah, there's like the ones that are like
But I guess that's with most actors.
No, that is true too. When
it
hits
that many great movies, I mean that's
with Burt. Because movies like Deliverance and Hustle and like The Longest Yard, especially like Deliverance, but were a bit earlier on in like his movie career. I mean, Burt Reynolds has been around since like the 50s. Like
it was before Burt Reynolds was a personality, and when Burt Reynolds just became Burt Reynolds and things.
Which is like Smokey and the Bandit. When it hit like Smokey and the Bandit, that's when you get all like the car movies afterwards and the movies he did with Dom DeLuise and the sequels and the ones that were trying to ape off the success of this movie. That's kind of the types of movies that Burt Reynolds would come out with after that. There would be some like critical gems in there scattered throughout, but he would still make, I mean, this movie is, there's a reason like Turner Classic Movies re-released it. It is regarded as a classic, but like Cannonball Run 2's not.
No.
But Burt Reynolds could still have the power of making something like that watchable.
Yeah. Well, and it says a lot about his star power at the time too, when it was like, this movie, fairly, for the time, high budget movie. And he's like, no, I want the stuntman to direct it.
Because you see, Burt Reynolds was a stuntman.
Yeah.
Remember White Lightning?
Oh, God.
That was so good. White Lightning was his early, it was an earlier one because he didn't have a mustache in it. And Ned Beatty was the bad guy. And Ned Beatty played the villain role in that movie like fucking straight. like not like fucking Superman Ned Beatty or Silver Streak Ned Beatty. Like, he was a psychopath in that movie.
Ned Beatty is honestly one of those, like, Ned Beatty, in my opinion, is one of those guys that is just truly a national treasure that most people just forget about until you mention him. But Ned Beatty's always great.
It's like that line from The Critic where Jay Sherman said, or it just cuts to his show at one point and he goes, and that's why the greatest actor of our time is Ned Beatty.
But I can't really argue with it. It's because he's fucking great.
There's some awful like Smokey and the Bandit ripoffs, and they all had the word Smokey in them. Like when you got to the fucking low budget ones, like Smokey bites the dust and shit like that. And
well, when you get into, see, the thing is, like, if you have a movie that just has a bunch of car chases, if you don't have the budget or the creativity to make them fun, it is a slog.
You're right.
It was like when we were watching The Loners. And that was more of like a rebel without a cause kind of thing that they were making, trying to make a profit off of. But they had a bunch of car chases. They had like the dumb redneck sheriff and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it had no budget, so you have to sit through a lot of like, they're going down the road.
Well,
and move on to another scene.
This could have been that too, except for like what this movie has going for it that all the other ones really don't is they have the characters and they have the dialogue, which is admittedly not genius dialogue, but it's so snappy and it's so quick that to keep pace with it, you have to pay attention.
And the dialogue also doesn't get enough credit to an extent, because it is true that the actors really do carry this film.
Oh, yeah.
And so does the direction, honestly. The car chases are super solid in this movie. But the sequels had... The second one also had Burt Reynolds and Jackie Gleason in it, and wasn't nearly as good.
Well, it didn't have the writing.
Yeah.
It didn't have the writing. And you know, technically speaking, if you look at this movie on a technical aspect, there's a shit ton of flaws. Like, the editing for this movie is quite simply awful.
I don't think so.
I really do. I think the editing's awful. The ADR is fucking laughable.
Well, because it's a 1977 movie.
But that's what it is. It's a product of its time. And that's what I meant by, like, we were watching, if this movie was made right now. And it was exactly the same.
If it was made exactly the same now, it'd be like, that's a great 70s throwback movie.
Yeah, honestly, you're right,
The plot and everything could only be made in that time.
Oh, no,
it was, because I'm glad there was the intro at the beginning to explain some of these things, because I didn't know about, like, that Coors wasn't available outside of Texas, and that there was the beer runs like that, so I didn't know about that. So that's a big part of the movie. So if I didn't understand that it was illegal to be doing this, I'd be like, well, what's happening here?
And to a degree, though, like, that honestly still happens to a degree. It's just not as... It's not Coors. Coors is what, like, a couple years ago, Fat Tire used to not be able to get that on the east side of the Mississippi River, which worked in bars. Like, I got that shit all the time. But we didn't sell it.
This Fat Tire would be worth bootlegging. That's way better than fucking Coors, which is the worst. I don't know how it was in 77, but it was the... Coors sucks.
Exactly the same.
It's kind of the most rednecky of the beers, so it kind of works for what's going on.
No, yeah, it does.
And all the CB radios and all this other stuff. I mean, like, this is something of its time.
Oh, yeah.
So if you made it now, it would have to be a throwback or change the plot entirely.
It would be like meth.
But it still holds up in that the movie's still fucking hilarious. And, like,
I love
you
those
can...
music stings.
Oh, God, yeah.
Whenever Buford T. Justice comes up. And
yeah. Movies like this always find a way to work in, like, glory, glory, hallelujah in there somewhere too, for whatever reason. Like, but yeah, you can, when you see a movie, like, especially around that time, especially when we go see them on the big screen again, you pick up the ADR work a lot more
than you ever do on TV. And
than you ever would on television.
And a lot of the fast-forward editing in this, where they just speed up the film for things.
Well, and when you see it in HD and on the big screen, you notice, like, oh, those lips aren't moving like what they're saying, and all this other stuff that you wouldn't notice as well.
But we've seen that with a lot of the re-releases we've seen. Like, in classic, like...
Dirty Harry.
This is a classic, but, I mean, better... regarded movies, maybe.
I think that's just how it was done back then.
No,
like,
absolutely.
I don't think it was poorly put together. Like, it was nothing I really noticed on a technical level that was out of the ordinary.
My brain just grabs at things like that. It's because I'm so fucking visually inclined that, like, when something like that happens, it's very jarring for me. But grading it on a curve, like... Yeah, it's from the 70s. It's still a fun movie to watch.
Sure, yeah, and I believe me, I noticed stuff like that in this movie too. But it's not going to bother me in a movie from 1977.
No.
If it was edited like that now, then it would be like, all right.
That's what I was saying when we started. It's like, You know, if someone remade this movie, which please God, do not remake this movie.
I thought it was a remake. When you asked me to, you're like, do you want to do double feature of Baywatch and Smokey and the Bandit? I was like, he remade Smokey and the Bandit?
There are like, there's the 2 sequels. Burt is only a cameo at the end of the 3rd one. The rest of it is Jerry Reed dresses like the Bandit and he's hauling a giant plastic fish.
That sounds embarrassing.
It is. Like, it made
really
the
bad.
2nd one look good by comparison, and the 2nd one was about Burt, Sallyfield, and Dom DeLuise transporting an elephant. And at the end of it, it had a car chase through a roller coaster in which Buford T. Justice, Jackie Gleason, was not only playing Buford T. Justice, but also all of his relatives.
Oh.
So his relatives would show up in the car chase too, and like, this is Uncle Tucker, and like, and this movie is edited well, in that like, I know what's going on in all these cars.
There's no question about what's happening in the movie.
The plot is easy to follow. Like, there's some historical notes I'm glad that they talked about, but otherwise, I mean, it's not a complicated movie to follow.
No, it's not, and also the car chases are well done, because like you said earlier, when you are trying to mimic something like this, or really just kind of doing a car chase movie in general, and you edit it badly, like yeah, okay, maybe you might be having trouble following what's going on, but even if you can follow what's going on in the car chases, sometimes it can turn tedious fast. It's like the difference between like Cannonball Run and Speed Zone. And honestly,
I mean, just having fast cars is not enough. You have to have some interest there.
Yeah.
And they do. And you can tell that there was budget in this, because even though a lot of it's just them on the road and driving, they wreck a lot of cars. There's a lot of scenes that would have taken a while to set up. Like, those could go wrong really easily. So you have to know what you're doing to make those cars crashes look good.
A good car chase is actually one of those things that's pretty rare, and that's, I think, when a good one's there, people talk about them for years. You know, it's this and The Italian Job, which there's hardly ever been car chases that good, but you watch it now and it's like, it is a little like slow.
it's been a while since I've seen. You're talking the Michael Caine one, right?
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've seen that.
It's still a great car chase, but it seems a little slow in comparison to what stuff you see in like Fast and the Furious. But some of those, it gets a little lost and fuzzy. And
gets lost in the special effects and everything, and I'm somebody who likes those movies, the Fast and the Furious movies.
There's
but,
no denying they're fun. But.
Yeah, but I'm more impressed when it's a movie like this, when it's a movie like Bullet, The French Connection. Movies like that where this feels like something that's really happening. There's real cars wrecking into real shit. It looks like it looks and feels like there are stakes. Yeah. Like somebody could die making this. I love
Bullet. They need to put that on the big screen.
Yeah. And the second one like had a even bigger budget than this one, and like it has this long chase through that roller coaster, which ends in the entire roller coaster like collapsing, and it's like, okay, I certainly appreciate the time and everything that went into making this scene, but when you're just doing that, it is tedious. There's not, and the jokes aren't great because it's Jackie Gleason playing like all of his like it's the Clumps.
Man.
and that's lends itself into how highly regarded this movie is too. That it even to this day it still stands out among being one of the best of its kind. Like, it's in terms of like the goofy car chase comedies of the 70s and 80s. But I think my mom was gonna try to go see it. Be her 200th time seeing it in the theater.
Record setting.
You should watch Cannonball Run sometime. You'd probably really like that.
Who's in that one?
Everyone likes it.
It's like, who do you know from that time period? They're in
it.
What this was 80s?
The second one was like 81 or 82. So the
Cannonball Run
first
was
one
like 78, 79.
Okay.
Yeah. Cannonball Run's got Dom DeLuise, of course, like Roger Moore, Jackie Chan.
The elephant from Larger Than Life.
No, that was Smokey and the Bandit too.
No, I was just thinking of when we were in Goodwill, and you were like, I always get Larger Than Life and that other one mixed up, and you're like...
Operation Dumbo Drop.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, it's the same elephant. I'm like, well, how do you know that? A woman walking by laughs.
I just know these things.
How many actor elephants can there be? I mean...
It's the same one in every movie.
That poor elephant.
He's fine. He's got a lot of money now.
He's retired years ago. He's living it up. Wonder if it is the same elephant from Smokey and the Bandit too. How long do elephant actors live?
Elephants live a pretty good long while. If I honestly, I don't know for sure, but I think they live quite a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have no idea.
I don't know. Probably like 20 years later, they retired that one.
Also in Cannonball Run, Dom DeLuise is a superhero. Named like fucking Captain Freedom or some shit.
Dom DeLuise was fantastic.
It's basically like Muttley and the Wacky Racers as a movie.
Yeah.
Like there's, I think it's the car. The one Burt Reynolds is in. I believe they're like an ambulance. They're in an ambulance, so that way they can get away with speeding.
Yeah, it's the like late 70s version of The Great Race.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Roger Moore is playing himself as James Bond. It's kind of great. And the second one, I don't remember the second one being nearly as good. I remember it being kind of bad, but of course I've probably seen it a few times. It's just been a lot of years. I just mainly remember like Siskel and Ebert being super mad at Cannonball Run 2, at Cannonball Run Part 2, and them saying something like, these assholes spent so much money getting all these cameos in here, they forgot to film a fucking race!
Well, that's
Siskel
what they
was
said on
angry.
there, huh?
Siskel was very angry.
If you look at the blooper reels for Siskel and Ebert, that might have been in the alternate footage. Any other thoughts about Smokey and the Bandit?
Man, it's Smokey and the Bandit. I mean, like, quite frankly, if you haven't seen it yet, there's no reason that you haven't. Like it's on TV all the fucking time.
Yeah, and my family puts it on at parties a lot. Yeah, I mean, of course it holds up for me, but it's probably been only a year since the last time I saw it. It's not like Space Jam or like, let's go see this 20 years later.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that, like, as long as you know that it's such a product of its era,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
then there's nothing about it that's unenjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
It was a fun movie, fun soundtrack, lots of charismatic actors. Yeah, it's good.
And only slight racism.
Well, they know it's racist, so I guess that's the point.
Well, when it was Burt Reynolds and Sally Field, like, one thing I love about their relationship in this movie is they openly talk about how they have nothing in common.
Yeah.
That's kind of charming, but like the part where they stop and it's like the romantic scene and it's playing that Jerry Reed Bandit song.
I love it. When they're walking together and then like, oh, bandits, steal woman's hearts.
So good. I leaned over to Laura and said, "This needs to be our song at our wedding." And Laura looks at me and goes, "It is so us."
I was just, when that was going on, I was like, this is corny. But then I'm thinking about like the Mitchell version where it's
Oh,
like,
God.
my Mitchell. And I'm like, well, I guess it could be that.
If this were Mitchell, it would have panned to the dashboard of the car and there would have been a thing of baby oil sitting there. Why does he have that? Is it for his mustache?
You never know when you need baby oil.
There's something great about a movie that just has a song that just talks about how great the lead is.
I know, right?
Let alone two.
I love that they have a different version of the eastbound and down depending on what direction they're driving. Because when they first start, it's westbound and down.
No, Jerry Reed is a stickler for details.
Apparently, he's the Kubrick of country music. I I miss Jerry Reed so fucking much. Jerry Reed was a blast. Alright, so I guess we should probably go see a comedy that won't be as good.
It might be good.
I don't think I'll like it as much as Smokey and the Bandit.
No, probably not.
I've
But
been really prejudgy about this movie, but I know it's gonna fucking blow.
yeah, it's probably gonna suck. But I gotta give him credit. The trailers made it look fun.
No.
As long as the rock's on point.
Did you see the Red Band trailer or the edited trailer?
Both, probably.
All right, because I think the Red Band was worse.
I mainly got the Green Band trailer for
Yeah.
Baywatch. Alright. Let's go see Baywatch. I'll be back. I can't see Pirates until the weekend because I'm going to be in Chicago until Saturday. So once I get back from Chicago on Saturday, Pirates. Yay. See ya.